This guide goes over everything relating to Boothill, from the basics to the advanced and niche tech that only a Boothill main could know. I'm a yapper, so I've added chapters so you can skip through to the relevant parts. I encourage you to bounce around the video because there's a lot covered and it might not all be relevant to you. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started, some of the footage is pretty old because I've been working on this video for a long time, way before the fork recording. But I had to put it off because I was finishing off my masters. But all of the ideas and concepts should still be relevant. Okay, so who am I? I'm M3, a free-to-play Boothill main who plays off-meta Boothill clears relatively often on the Boothill subreddit. I've been a Boothill main for ages, like since his release, and I've cleared every single reset of MOC, APOC, and Pure Fiction with Boothill, even before the Pure Fiction rework. I love off-meta teams and weird interactions. So now you know a bit about me, let's get right into it. So you're interested in playing the cowboy. Boothill is a single target physical break DPS who excels at taking out elites and bosses. He can be difficult since he has a risk reward playstyle that requires good target priority and knowledge of how action advance works in order to function at his highest level. Some of his strengths include high single target damage. In the right scenarios, Boothill has the highest single target damage output in the game. He has high flexibility in deal DPS because of his flexible team options and the fact that you can run him sustainless. Speaking of sustainless, Boothill is very good in sustainless teams because you can build him full HP or defense, and his A4 trace allows him to take less damage from people who aren't in stand-up. His ult also has 40% delay, which can be massive for keeping your team alive. And most importantly, he is very fun and has very high skill expression. There's nothing quite like one-shotting an enemy with one shot. He turns HSR from the fun button to an actual fun puzzle. Now onto some of his weaknesses. His biggest strength is also his biggest weakness, his single target damage, especially in the current meta, which focuses on dealing AoE damage. This is a bit of a weird weakness, but a lot of Boothill's best in slot teams just don't have skill damage at all, which can be very frustrating when you're dealing with MOC buffs and Pure Fiction buffs that require you to deal skill damage. Another weakness is, to get his full peak potential, it might be a little bit expensive considering you really want his S1, Fugue E1 for his peak potential, and Real Mate E1, but none of that is necessary for having a good Boothill with good amount of output. Lastly, Boothill's in this weird spot where he's getting old but he's still performing really well, so it's very unlikely he's going to get any direct buffs, meaning that he's going to have similar strength leading on to the future, and that's something to be wary of. So before we get into the guide proper, I just want to give one general tip that will help you out with all of your HSR gameplay, but specifically with Boothill it helps quite a lot. So go into your settings, go into the last tab and turn on display character action value in battle. It will give you a really good sense of how far away your character is from taking a turn and help you to maximize the value of your action advances. The first thing you need to focus on in Boothill is getting 3 stacks of pocket Trickshot. So if we look at his skill, the way that you can do that is by entering standoff and either weakness breaking the enemy or defeating them to get your stacks. And they count separately, so you can get 3 stacks at once. And that leads us to our first tech, the team Trickshot tech. If you look at the footage, I'm able to get 3 stacks of pocket Trickshot without even taking a turn by using Fugue's ultimate to break the enemy. This is a pretty commonly known tech that will save you a lot of time stacking Boothill's talent. Once you stack up Boothill's talent, now it's time to break. But you have to break properly. What does that even mean? Well, let's play a quick game to spot the difference. Can you tell why I deal more damage in clip A compared to clip B, even though I have the same buffs and the same build? Let's have a look. As you can see, I'm dealing more than double the damage in clip B. This is because in Superbreak, the amount of break bar left actually really matters for your damage output. The amount of excess break is used to calculate the damage in the Superbreak formula. Keep in mind that this isn't the case for just plain break teams that don't have Harmony MC or Fugue. Now that we've got the basic stuff down, let's have a look at some of the more weird and interesting things that he can do. You may already know about the synergy between Acheron and Boothill, but if you don't know, I'm here to tell you. And I personally love this synergy because of the lore with like the Galaxy Rangers and stuff. But the way it works is that Acheron can act as a breaker for Boothill since she has colourless breaking on her ult, and Boothill can act as a debuffer for Acheron since his skill cast acts as adding a debuff, breaking acts as adding a debuff, and his ultimate also counts as adding a debuff. He can apply 3 debuffs in a single turn, making him one of the fastest ult batteries for Acheron in the whole game. I'll talk a little bit more about their synergy in the team section later on. The next tech is the standoff action advance tech, and before I get into it, I think I have to explain a little bit of how action advance works. If I'm being completely honest, it took me a while to realise how it actually worked, so I've come up with a little visualisation to help you guys out a little bit. Imagine the action value bar as a ladder, more accurately as a set of ladders, and each character's speed stat determines how fast they climb up the ladder, and once they get to the top, they get to take a turn. You may think that action advance works by moving your character up the ladder, but it actually works by removing a portion of the ladder based on their distance left to travel to the top. That's why action advancing on your turn doesn't usually carry over, since the character's distance to the top is 0, and action advance is based on distance to the top, so nothing happens. Let's take a practical example of Harmony MC using S5 Dance Dance Dance, which has 24% action advance. We can see that Ruan-Mei actually benefits the most from the action advance. Since she has a large distance to travel, a larger portion of the distance is removed by action advancing. This leads us back to the Boothill tech. Boothill's skill has a special property that technically ends his turn after its cast, adding him back to the action queue at his lowest action value. This means that the best time to action advance him is on his turn right after you cast his skill. And it also means that you can do silly things like this.
Bring it on.
Stars echo. Welcome to my Seize the moment.
The next tech is a very niche one, but I'm a believer in 4-star Tingyun as one of Boothill's best budget supports, and it's the AV gap tech. So if you have Dance 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 and E6 Tingyun, you can use Tingyun's ult at the start of battle, which bumps up your team by 24% action value, and Boothill's ult can be used right at that moment, turn 0, to delay the enemy by 40%. It gives you a lot of time to do some really interesting setups. Like one of my favourite Boothill clears that I've done is against Cocolia, and I use this tech to basically break more than half of her bar before the start of battle. So it's really niche, but I think it's useful to know. To add on to the Tingyun Shilling, there's another niche tech that you can do where you can get a 1-turn ultimate on Boothill. I like to call this one the double Tingyun tech because it requires Fugue to be able to pull off. You need to have the Thief set, and if you have Tingyun skill on Boothill and you break using his ultimate while in standoff, you get just about enough energy to cast another ultimate. Another very niche one, but I could see how someone could get use out of it. To be completely honest, I think I actually cooked a little bit on this last tech. This is the double true damage tech, a pure fiction Boothill special. Did you know that Ruan-Mei does a decent amount of damage because of her talent? Like, it's comparable to Robin in AoE situations, sometimes even surpassing her. This tech is similar to using Robin with RMC. You can use Mem's gift on Ruan-Mei to buff up her talent damage. This really helps Boothill in the first phase, since the AoE means that he can't really do much. And in the second phase, you can time it so that Boothill also gets the true damage bar, and you get 2 hits of double true damage. Before we get into the team and build section, I should explain how Boothill actually deals damage. The biggest portion of his damage is break damage, around 75 to 90%, depending on how you build him, followed by his physical break dot, then followed by his attack scaling talent damage, which usually makes up the smallest portion of his damage. It's important to note that Boothill doesn't have any Superbreak damage in his kit without Fugue or HMC, he only deals break damage. Attack, crit damage, and damage bonus don't affect break damage at all. The only things that buff break damage are character level, break effect, defense reduction, vulnerability, res pen, and now true damage. Super break damage scales with all the same factors as break damage, but it also scales with weakness break efficiency, which is why Rowan May and Fugue E1 are so useful in those teams. Now onto the build section. What is Boothill's optimal build? Well, the short answer is 4-piece Iron Cavalry, the long answer is 4-piece Thief, and the even long answer is the Eagle set. It's easy to assume that 4-piece Cavalry is his best set, but it's very dependent on his team build. Iron Cavalry gives us 16% break effect, 10% def ignore on break damage, and 25% def ignore on super break damage. Kinda like crit rate, def reduction is capped at 100%. Any more than 100% def reduction or def ignore is wasted. Boothill already has 20% def ignore on his light cone, and his team options also have a lot of def ignore at higher investments. If we consider his most popular sustainless team, all at E1 with Fugue on resolution, you're already at 108% def reduction. Or any team with Pella and Fugue would already have 98% def reduction. At that point, Iron Cavalry is pretty redundant since it would only just give you 16% break effect. This might be controversial, but you could consider the other defense reduction sets, such as the Prisoner set or the Quantum set, since the defense ignore from the Iron Cavalry set only applies to super break damage, whereas the def ignore from the other sets applies to all of Boothill's damage, including his initial break and the break dot. I personally wouldn't farm this set for Boothill, but if you have some good pieces with good substats, then it might be a good alternative. If you can't get 100% def reduction or don't care as much about one-shot damage, you have to consider the Thief set or the Wind set. The Thief set has added utility from the energy regeneration, and if you have Fugue, you get 6 more energy from the break and the extra toughness break, which allows for unique setups. And since you get 32% break effect instead of 16 on Iron Cavalry, you actually end up dealing more damage than Iron Cavalry if you're at 100% def reduction already. My personal favourite, and the best in slot for teams that don't have an action advancer like Sunday or Bronya, is the Wind set, since it drastically lowers his speed substat requirements. And Boothill has really fast ult rotation because of his energy mechanics, which means there's high uptime on the action advance from the 4-piece Wind set. The Wind set advancing you as his ult delays the enemy allows you to outspeed the enemy a lot more easily. As for the actual stats, the only stats you're looking for in Boothill are speed and break effect. This means you should always build speed boots and break effect rope on Boothill. Everything else is up to personal preference. The specific amount of break effect and speed is very enemy dependent. You may need to sacrifice break effect for speed to outspeed an enemy, especially in sustainless, or you might have to sacrifice speed for more break effect to hit damage breakpoints that actually defeat an enemy. But as a reference point, I tend to aim for at minimum 220 break effect. The Boothill mains subreddit gives some advice saying that you should have at least 300 in battle, and I think that's solid advice, but the more the better. Try not to get baited by Boothill's trace that gives you more crit the more break effect that you have. It doesn't affect his damage that much. For speed, aim for at least 160 or 161 if you're running with an action advance unit, which allows you to go 4 times in the first 2 cycles. If you're highly invested in speed, you could also aim for 174 speed, which allows him to get pseudo 200 speed with Ruan May's talent and 1 DDD push. For the Wind set, anything above 145 to 150 is pretty good, depending on how well you use the action advance, but the more speed the better. As for main stats, I personally prefer HP or defense chest to keep my Boothill tanky and in sustainless team comps. But if you need a little bit more damage to get early stacks of Trickshot or for any other reason, you could either run attack or crit chest for a minor damage improvement. But genuinely, it does not matter. You could even run an outgoing healing boost chest and it would not change your damage output that much. I tend to change my build all the time, but my most commonly used build is usually 4-piece Eagle and 2-piece Cavalry with a HP or defense chest, and a defense ult at around 250 break effect and 150 plus speed.
Babu, you're out of your mind. Cowboy, let me remind you, put that gun away. You've got backup plans, but I got one and it's gonna be this Jade Abacus you'll see. No! He's hunting down the IBC, I love the way he rides. I can hardly breathe when he's shooting up them guys. Just kiss your Jades away and he'll be home.